It's fuck.
You would think, but that's not.
Bye.
All right, so we're
Fuck that shit.
no,
Go
hey,
ahead.
we're fucking that shit. So we're gonna talk
No.
about giving your characters different voices. So go ahead. You got an email in from a author, right?
Yep.
An author from a writer. Yes, yes. This person, yeah,
Okay.
identifies themselves as a writer. Yeah, she DM'd me on my author page and wrote, well, as a writer, I am struggling with dialogue, particularly getting my characters to sound different from one another. Do you have any advice that could help me?
It's a damn good question, by the way.
It is a damn good question. I kind of like, I like my knee-jerk reaction was kind of like to dismiss it, but then I was like, no, that's really stupid because like it is a really good question.
It is. Yeah,
so
that's an excellent question.
I gave her like a 2-sentence answer. I told her I love writing dialogue. The best advice I can give is to hear them in your head. Pay attention to keeping your own voice out of all but one of the characters and write with conscious intent. And I pressed send and that was it. And she thanked me and I was like, you're welcome, goodbye. But then the thing kind of followed me, I guess.
Well, that's a remarkably short answer, but you were right on all counts. So all we really need to do is expand on your answer because the method actor part is what I do. I see and think characters as though I'm some sort of fuckface actor. It's the only way to do it. You have to
Matt Damon.
That's what I sounded like this morning. Anyway,
he's dead.
You have to narrow zero a personality type. Gender is important, but you have to act it out and talk the damn thing through in your brain.
Dialect, accent, language, temperament. I mean, you got to remember, a character's a character. Most of us, those of us who write more than one main character, who have 3 or 4 or 5 or 20, Glacia,
you fucker.
Hey, you got that 3 David and Lark and the whole douchebag guy, and I know, yeah, right. So we got all these characters, yeah, but it's important to keep track of their voices. Got different temperaments, different reservations, different thoughts, different ways they speak. So, I mean, and honestly, one of my problems has always been I have to go back through because sometimes I will have a character say something, but it will not be in their voice. It will be in another character's words. And you got to go back and kind of look at it and go, wait, he wouldn't say that. That's this character who would say it.
Now, that's an excellent point. There's a trick to this when you're first writing dialogue. I wish I was smart enough, or I wish I could say I was smart enough to have figured this out beforehand. But I learned it after a few drafts, and that is to ask yourself after you write a segment of dialogue, would this person, knowing their personality, knowing who they are, you know them better than anybody else, they're like real people to us, would that person say that first? And then you can worry about the inflection of the voice and all of that kind of shit. Does this follow that character's personality first pulse check you take?
And that's important because you're sitting there, you're writing your book. I've got my characters, Captain Blake Campbell wouldn't sit there and go, I'm having a bad day. Can I get a hug? That wouldn't be something Blake would say. He'd be like, fuck you, I'm going to shoot you. That would be Blake, because that's his character type, And you have to keep track of your characters. You have to know, for continuity's sake, what they're going to sound like, what they're going to say in a certain situation. I mean, how many of us live and breathe our characters when we're writing them? I mean, honestly, talk about them like real people.
Yep.
Shit, I have conversations about my character, with Glacier or somebody else. It's like, oh, well, you know what he did today?
Yep. It's like you're talking about somebody at work. It's a real person, and it should be, because if it's not, then the problem that this writer is having becomes a pain in the ass because it's a monotone dialogue through across characters. That's a killer. Can't have that. Here's a thought. Glace, the little segment of dialogue that I sent you, one of these people, the human, is given to banter. He's he can be a bit of a smartass from time to time. Not mouthy, but
he's a good thing.
Right. His girlfriend, alien girl, is a lot of things, but humorous ain't one of them.
Alien girl.
And so he pecks at her and he drags her, whether she likes it or not, into banter. An exchange. It's more fun because it's a human alien thing, and she looks at him like, what planet are you from? And he says, well, I'm from Earth, as a matter of fact. But that kind of stuff fits because you have a foil and you have an antagonist that he's pecking at her with goofy banter. It sounds bizarre to her, but he ends up sucking her in, and she takes part in it whether she likes it or not. That kind of thing is a scenario you could see with people that acquaintances or friends that don't go for that kind of shit, but you weasel and you tease them and you goofball with them, and that's the kind of stuff that it creates. But it's a really conscious application of how these people behave and what their personalities are before you waste a bunch of time figuring out how they should talk. Know who they are, you're halfway there.
Yeah, no, that's it. You can't start inventing dialogue and then go back and be like, would that person say that thing, unless you know who the fuck that person is.
A1.
You know, it's not just dialogue is the most appreciable action that a character can take. And so if you have vague dialogue, then essentially you have a vague character. And so, it kind of goes back to that whole backstory thing, right? Like, in order to have like a really dynamic, interesting character who's able to have a real arc, you have to have things like backstory. And Ray, I think you were saying this, it has to do with, it's not where the character is now. That's why the backstory thing is so valuable. Where was this guy born?
Yep.
Why did he leave? Why did he leave if he left? Was this an acrimonious parting? Is this something that he wanted to shed? How much of his accent stuck around? And then personality traits. Is this person impatient? What makes that person the most impatient? Person a listener. There goes Rob again.
I took it down.
Rob died. Man down, man down. Medic.
Somebody send me some. Oh, never mind.
Where's the life alert button? I've fallen and I can't find my beer.
Okay, so this is the kind of childish shit that probably got us to the 500. That's what this is.
Pretty much. This is the stuff, yeah.
Childish guns.
We are not adulting very well today. I just want to tell you that right now. I'm gonna take my fucking Lego wall, get in my goddamn blanket fort, and start coloring. Fuck you guys, all right? Blanket fort. But
did you hear back from this writer, Glaze?
She just said thank you and moved on from there. So who knows? Yeah, I mean, like, a part of me kind of wants to like check back up with her in a week and be like,
hey, Glacia scared her. Glacia scared her.
So. Glacia scares lots of people. I'm wondering though.
Do that.
So I would want to know if what you told her makes perfectly good sense to me. And even though it was concise and you can put it on a postage stamp, everything that you told her is dead on. That's really good stuff that you told her. I wonder what she made of it. Did she think, okay, now it's time to go back and do a little introspection on my writing and yada yada?
Well, I think that's kind of a matter of like where you are as a writer. Are you like elementary school level, or are you like entry college? Are you graduate level? You're able to appreciate that advice because you already have the groundwork there to be able to be like, yeah, that's accurate because I already know that sort of thing. So like, how much basis do you have to have?
There are pitfalls. You have to remember there are pitfalls when dealing with writing, especially when you're in science fiction or you're in fantasy. You have characters who are alien, not of Earth, and they're talking. You haven't really given them a backstory. And all of a sudden, the dude comes off sounding like he's from Texas, complete with colloquialisms and contraptions. And you're like, how the fuck did an alien learn colloquialisms from Texas? It's been a fantasy. Fantasy is really neat because a lot of, like, Brian Saunderson does this. He will give his characters words that they're nonsensical words, but they're ones he used, like, something you use to ask a question or to address a friend that expound upon the character and give them that little more of mystery in the fantasy realm of words that don't fit into our language set. So it's a way to enhance that speech.
But it also ties into the backstory that Glaze just talked about. Yeah. Consistency. I'll go. I wonder if your writer ever listens to these, because I can tell you, I don't have anywhere near as many mains as either of you do. I mean, you've got a circus of people in your books. I have a lot of people rolling through, but I've got a very small core group of 5 or 6 mains, and so but still, with that restricted number of main characters, I keep a notepad and a pencil, and I continually check myself because it's easy to go off into a different place. Emotions will force them to different places. You have to address that. One person doesn't get pissed off the same way another one
No.
does. All of those things have to be kept in account of. And because I'm a numbskull, I have to keep notes to make sure I'm not screwing it up because I don't want the Texas colloquialisms coming in my alien.
Exactly. But I mean, I have one of the tricks that I use that when I'm starting creating a character is I actually envision what they sound like. So if I've got a character like, the little Furby fucker that I've got in my book, Kree, I literally go, okay, what does Kree sound like? Well, he sounds like, he sounds like, the little short guy from Taxi. That's what he sounds like. So in my head, I now have a voice. I now have an idea of what he sounds like, and then as I build my characters, I kind of get who do they sound like? I give them an actor or a character from something I've watched before that just gives me an association.
Absolutely.
So that not only gives me a sound, but it gives me a style of speech. And that's important. So that's a great way.
That's an excellent trick is to assign as a mnemonic an actor, actress that would, if you were casting a movie, that's what that person would sound like. You saved yourself a shit ton of problems if you can go immediately to that person and listen to their voice. I have one of those. I hate the actress, but I love her voice. So but I can hear her. I'd slug her in the throat in person, but there she is, and that voice is just perfect for my main character. And you can see her face from time to time when you're writing. That's keeping you centered. That's really where you need to be.
Yeah, I go down that road also. Like I will kind of start writing people, get a picture of them in my head, and then I will pick an actor, like to the point where I actually have files like on my computer that allow me like visual anchor.
Yeah, exactly.
To be able
and that's important. Yeah, well, it is. That's hugely important. I mean, I get Louis De Palma as the character I got for Kree, but everybody's got a different voice, and that kind of just sets the the mnemonic. That's exactly right. It gives you a tone, a pace, an idea of what he sounds like. What kind of attitude does he have? Because attitude's important with every character. Every character's different.
It colors dialogue.
And you want to make sure. Yeah, it really does. It does color the dialogue. But there are a lot of people, and we get these questions, well, how could they sound different? Because in my head, they all sound the same. Well, you know what? Inject a little voice into it. Inject an actor. Envision it as somebody playing the part. It doesn't have to be your voice. And that's a big one. It really is. I mean, perform the book in your head. That's what I do. As I'm writing, I'm literally having a performance going on in my head.
Absolutely. And it's so an adjunct to that, one of your characters, Ray, you said this at the beginning of the discussion, and I've heard from other writers that are nervous as hell about this, and I don't think they should be. I don't know that it's possible to avoid it unless you're extremely disciplined. One of your characters is going to sound like you. People who know you will read it and say, man, I could hear your voice right in this character. That's okay.
You guys,
right? It's perfectly fine if one of your characters, it could be the main, but that's not but exactly only one. They can hear you, but everybody else in there is different, and they shouldn't hear you at all.
Well, it's always, any of my characters aren't exactly like me, but each of my characters holds a different aspect. There's always an aspect to a character. If I've got 5 main characters, they each have a different aspect of something I'm interested in or something I'm like. I've got an engineer know-it-all, I've got a smart ass, I've got a, very put together military type. It's just different aspects, because that's what we do. We write what we know. Anytime we write what we know. So we inject something personal into these characters. And it doesn't have to be your personality exactly. Maybe it's just a component of it. Explore that. Give them a piece of it and let them be somebody else. That way, they're not exactly like you, because obviously you don't want 5 characters who are exactly the same. That makes a pretty boring book. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
unless they're clones. Yeah.
But beyond that, you talk about picking the actors for voice and mannerisms and stuff like that, and then like allowing yourself to use you as one character. The other thing that is sometimes helpful, though not always wise, and you definitely shouldn't tell people that you're doing it, is to use somebody that you're close to as a model.
Yes.
a
Good
friend,
point.
a family member, someone who you know better than
Hey,
just an actor watching them in a movie, you know, where you pick a performance and you're like, oh,
yeah,
I'm going to do this person in this movie. Taking
Yeah.
a close friend of yours who you can predict their behavior. You can be like, oh, in this situation, this person would react this way, would say this thing, would inflect in this way, would gesticulate along with these words like this. That can be very, very helpful, especially early on when you're kind of
it's
learning
good
how to
for
flesh out
training wheels
characters.
because you know how that person sounds and you can do the dialogue with that person. If you've got a
Yeah.
best friend and you have two characters and one of them mimics you and one of them mimics them, you can envision that conversation because you've had something similar before. It's
Yeah.
Glacia is absolutely right. It's a great way for training wheels
Yeah.
when you're just starting out to maintain that separation of voice.
Yeah.
And for your writer's benefit, it takes you a book, maybe two, but you will get to a point at which you can't blend them. You're
Yes.
separating and you're following different paths of personality, of inflection, of presentation, whether you like it or not. You get there naturally. Just give yourself a chance. But training wheels is a great way to look
Right.
at it. There are things to do
It
that will
is.
help you keep them separate.
Well, and like to go back to, I was looking this up when you guys were talking about rules, right? You want to talk about
She's
training.
Googling.
There
Right
we
there
No, no,
on the
go.
line.
no,
She's
no, no,
Googling.
absolutely not. I'm going to
She's
share. This
Googling.
isn't Googling. This is
Okay, go ahead.
sharing. When I
All
Oh,
was
right.
writing
share
my,
time.
it's share time. When I was writing my first
Share
book,
time. All right.
I mean, because this doesn't work, I'm having a hard
I
time
get you.
keeping track of character traits and stuff like that. And so you want to talk about
Right.
specific notes. Some of the notes that I have in here read like, um, David turns in circles and clears his throat when he's upset. Lark speaks in useless adverbs when talking in thoughts and feeling, uses a lot of actually, really, obviously. Lark repeats people's statements to acknowledge them. You coming? Yeah, I'm coming. It's dark. Yeah, it's dark. That sort of thing.
That's awesome detail, but it is, man, it fills out the texture of characters so much better than
Right.
I'm thumbs up. That's an awesome idea. I don't care if you had to take notes to do it,
It's
but that absolutely affects your dialogue. What you were just talking about, you
Yep.
won't write them a different way after you've written them once. Now you know them, and that stuff is
absolutely.
automatic.
Yeah, it helps you develop that sound in your head, and
Yeah.
once you've become familiar with that character, they just play in your head like that movie. Because a lot of times, you know, there isn't that anchor, there isn't that, you know, oh, this is me, or oh,
Right.
this is my best friend, or oh, this is my dad. You know, sometimes you're actually creating, you know, real characters. I have one character in here who, like, he's based on absolutely nobody. And so like I write him and I know what he sounds like now, but initially, you know, I would write him and I was very careful when I proofed him because he has little ticks. Like he always contracts words the first two. So he doesn't say things like I haven't. He says I've not, because of his backstory. That makes sense, the way he speaks in that way.
There you
And
go.
and so when I write him and I go back, I'm like, okay, Thomas says things like that. And so I'm very, very careful to make sure that I'm reading him in that way to make sure that he's aligning with himself. It's funny, I'm speaking of him like he's an actual person.
Well,
Well,
and
welcome
you
to the
know, and that's
club because uh,
Right.
one of the ways to save time, and the reason I bring that up about the actor is once you start transitioning to other platforms like Audible, that information becomes critical. Because
Mm.
if you're having
oh,
somebody read your
absolutely.
book,
Yeah.
I can go, hey, this is Louis De Palma from Taxi. That's what he sounds like. You know what? 2 seconds on Google and a video, and you've got that voice nailed. Because
Yeah.
that's one of the things that's nice about it. You're able to do that if you've got it set up where you've got something you can relate the voice to. Rom and my character, I went, yeah, Tim Curry, legend. That's what he sounds like. You know, it just
Wow.
literally, yeah,
Ah,
I know. And this
Right
is
away. Right away I can hear
right
it.
as
And
soon as you
I'm
got
gonna
it,
look
oh, you knew it.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's the key, right? And that's the whole point to it. You're able to look at that and go, oh, I get it. As soon as you do, you get it. You know,
We
but
are all
it's that
animals, Mike.
association. Yeah, right. It's that association. It's huge.
I
But
love
that's
that
it.
guy. So
Yeah,
now fantasy science fiction folks like Ray and I get away with something that has to shift a little in Glace's world. Um, uh, in my books, I have disparate people from other civilizations, races, and so I've got one whose language is so fucked up and convoluted. It translates very poorly into English. And so she says only or maybe at the end of sentences a lot. And it's fun. And she clips the language. And I have to be very careful on how I write her. But that's an anchor to me, because that helps me understand how she will react to things. I have another civilization, and they don't use contractions at all, ever. They won't, they
Right.
will not won't. And so those are handy little, they're ways for you to make your dialogue distinctive. In Glace's world, her task is more difficult because they're human people right here, right now on Earth. And
Right.
the only easy avenue for her would be accents from different regions. So if you're not writing wacko lunatics like Ray does, or a bunch of bloodthirsty aliens like I do, you have a different way and a different method to make those distinctions. Glace gets away with it,
Right.
though, in ways we don't.
That's something you have to be really, really careful about. I mean, like, I have one character who has sort of like a distinct diction, and a very faint accent that comes out when he's very stressed and frantic, but only in the way that he becomes non-rhotic. He drops the occasional R or hits the occasional T really, 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 really hard.
And that's
when he gets
very specific to that character.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I went lazy mode on mine. That was just great. I had Universal Translator injected nanites so everybody hears what they want to hear. So, I was like, no, screw that. Easy button. Took care of that shit.
The only
That's
accent
right.
that I
Plot
opted to
vehicles.
use, the only accent that I opted to use in mine was something that actually had to do with another character's backstory, and it had to do with why she shed her own accent. And so
Yeah.
there is hard Virginian in my book. It reference.
Excuse me, sir. Welcome to Virginia.
No,
Yeah,
no,
right.
the trashy
Oh.
Virginian, Appalachian.
Oh, the Appalachian trashy Virginia.
Somebody cut my
man.
hair. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody cut my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
just
They really
yeah.
do say
Yeah.
har in West Virginia, by the way.
Appaloosa. We're at the
Okay, but-
Appaloosa.
So I have one of my human characters who is English, born and raised in England, and I have to be very careful there because you don't read a dialectic, you don't read an accent. You have to throw words in that will give the reader a clue, and so there are.
Well, it's also how you spell. Like favor is spelled differently in England than it is here. So when you're doing that, recognize favor.
OU,
there are, and that's the OU.
That's an interesting thing. I've never done that, but
I
what
don't
I
think
do
I would do that. No,
I don't.
Yeah.
No,
I think that'd
for
be kinda
consistency,
cool.
I don't. But that's an interesting point. But this guy, he has.
I've seen it done.
If you read it, you would know right away he's not American. And then after a while, some of these tells start to show up. And for example, he didn't steal something; he nicked it, and that's a very, very classic
Cockney thug
Britishism. And so, yeah, there you go. Well, he's not Cockney. He's actually he's
we're going to be in Bonnie.
He's a bit of a
Bonnie
an
Rubble
aristocrat, but those are the kinds of things that you can use as differentiators. And the reason I bring up accent, or for Ray and I, goofball weirdos, is because the distinction allows you to break up your dialogue, whether you like it or not. You've saved yourself from voices sounding very much the same. If you know that you're coming at this from either a different species or a racial component or a regional component.
Right.
If you capitalize on those, then it just makes it a little bit easier. Glace is a freak. She gets into where he uses contractions in a sentence. I wouldn't have dreamt of that. And hats off to her for doing it, but the reader will get it. The reader, after a while, will develop an affinity for this. They will associate that person, and you've got them now. And that differential has been made. That's really the root.
I've been told by a lot of readers, like it's a theme with my readers. They're like, I can hear them in my head, and I'm like, good. Then
Exactly.
I did my job, because I am very careful about dialogue and how everybody speaks. But to go with what you were saying, this is a debate that is this is a hot debate, and it's not all over the place. But when it comes up, people are very much. Ooh, yeah. People are polarized about this. And that's whether or not, when you're writing accents, whether you should spell certain words phonetically to convey accents. You know,
it makes
extreme
me
accent.
nervous as hell. Oh yes, I've been down this path, and it's just I can't get myself there. I can't unless I really make a deliberate setup and overdo the demonstration. I won't do it um, as a sleight of hand to get the reader to hear or
Okay. Yep.
listen to or read my dialogue I won't do it. I stay away from phonetic spelling. To me, that's a slippery slope to a bad place.
The only two times I've ever seen it where it's been moderately effective, and I'm hoping I'm actually remembering correctly that these are actually in there, is in The Green Mile. The Cajun guy, the Creole guy. What was his
name? Yep.
Delacroix. Yeah, he
Delacroix,
he had some phonetic spellings. And then there was I forgot my other one.
That was fucked up not putting water in the sponge, I'm just saying.
I hated that. It was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. One of the people
there was a couple
in there.
in the stand.
Okay. Now, of course, maybe the most notorious for this would be the old gumshoe fun author Mickey Spillane. He did that shit on purpose.
Spillane.
Right? He did New York, Brooklyn guttural stuff, and he wrote it that way on purpose. And I always thought, man, he's got balls. I didn't think of it when I was a kid reading that stuff, but I thought it was charming. It was fun to read, but as a writer now, I wouldn't.
Regional
absolutely
in there. That was
Yeah, I wouldn't go anywhere.
You wouldn't get unless you're from there. Yeah, he was very specific about that. No, you're right.
Go there. Go to slang. You want to talk about that? Slang and colloquialisms and crap like that?
I beat the shit out of slang. I got no fear of. Yeah, exactly. If the character is given to slang, I'll use it up. If he's or she's not.
If you got a Southern character from deep Alabama, he's gonna have his little Southern colloquialisms. There's no question about it.
I don't think you can avoid it. You have to write to it. You have to write to it.
There's a natural flavor to that character's voice. It is.
Yeah.
It's a big one. So you kind of need that. I mean, that's what makes the character. Your guy from Alabama is not gonna sound like he's from Boston.
No, he won't. But and actually, you know what? You can even enhance this, or I suppose enhance is the right word. When my haughty Brit aristocrat guy starts getting pissed off, there is still very clear British in him. He says, "Oh well, splendid." I don't know anybody in America who says, "Oh well, splendid," but I know people in England who do.
Put him in the boot. Yeah, they got him in the boot.
Exactly so.
They put him in the boot.
So I slammed his head with the bonnet. And did you indeed? Well, thank you very much. But that's the kind of stuff.
They have those little words they use. Yeah.
Yep. And they come, and emotion will trigger a bunch of that stuff. It elevates it up to the top. It should in your writing as well. Yeah. These are all really great ways to circle back where we were to start with, to establish separate and distinct voices of your characters for dialogue and keep it from sounding. Glacia accused me of being a retard author. And so I just want to say this keeps me from being. I shouldn't do that. That's so
I did not.
I'm breaking your chops, but that's the kind of stuff. See, I wish we could get feedback from your writer inquiry person. So the stuff that because we're expanding the shit out of what you told her. That's really what we're doing tonight. You had it in a nutshell. The
character has their own flavor. You get a guy from New Orleans, he's going to have a different flavor than a guy from Alabama, than a guy from Texas, and a guy from New York. They have their own flavor, which means they have their own local colloquialisms, little bit sayings, just things that are very specific to them. Like New Orleans is not going to sound like he's going to be New Orleans. He's going to have that have that nice big drawl.
Yeah.
It's like Boston where he's going to go New Orleans. He's just that. It's just that different thing he's got. So giving that flavor to the character is important. And there have been more than one.
Was that you dinging? Who just dinged?
We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I. I've still commitments while I'm thinking of. You wouldn't get this from any
fucking
Rickroll.
Come on! Fuck you
I
guys.
want a Fache Book metric that tells us how many people just went fuck you and turned it off. Immediately just said, I do not want to hear that shit ever again. I hated it in the 80s. I hate it now, and I hate you people for doing. That's awesome. Perfect.
Yeah. We
Hey,
got
Rickroll.
Maker. It's on.
There you go.
Fuck
I
it.
want the one where his voice goes falsetto, though. You got to get the falsetto one.
Roll and find the cast of AIC who happens to be in the video. So
and tell us where we are.
tell us where we're at.
Come
Some
back
of us
with
that zany fucking Scooby-Doo peer in. I'd have got away with it. Wasn't for you pesky kids. Oh,
Scott.
right.
Oh, God. All right.
Ashley, take his mask off. Who is it? It's Alice Cooper. No, it's Rogers.
Yeah, we lost a shit ton of listeners just there. I guarantee you. There's like 6 people left now because they don't have anything better to do. They're trying to open up, a Twinkies package, and they're bleary-eyed.
They're Twinkie. They're like, oh,
yeah. Or they're just amped on so many cans of Mountain Dew down in mom and dad's basement watching these dumbass authors. They hate themselves. They hate us. Awesome.
Hey, Mom, eat some more ragu,
Can you turn the light off for me? All right.
Light up. It's cold. Turn the heat up. No shit. So,
okay, cool.
Colloquialisms and shit like that, flavor colloquialisms. Anything you can do to differentiate your characters will add to that enhancement, add to that story and that believability. That's a big one. I mean, if your characters have those little sayings or those little, dialect pieces or those just native local things like, a frap or a cabinet or a sub or a hoagie, something that they say is very specific to them will go a long ways towards differentiating those characters in the book, especially for the reader who's going to notice that stuff.
Backstory will tell you a lot about that. When you're creating that character and you have a component that brings them to your book from another place, it ain't a bad idea, early writer, go research the shit out of that place and figure out how people talk. Listen to how they talk.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then incorporate it. Hoagie versus sub. Perfect. Sprinkles versus Jimmy's. Right? Only people in Boston say Jimmy. Or everybody else on Earth says sprinkles. I want some sprinkles on my ice cream cone. Yeah, you want some Jimmy's, Rob? Rob, you want Jimmy's, Rob? Yeah, if they say my name 18 times in a second. I hope I don't have anybody on from Boston because they're going to give me the finger by remote control. But
they are going to give you the finger by remote control.
So there we go. We beat the living shit out of that topic, and I'm glad we did. Really good question from your reader, whoever she is. Pass on our admiration because that's an excellent question.
Yes, that was awesome.
I loved your answer, Glaze, but now that we have just savaged the shit out of it since, it should be a little bit better for folks to figure out. I'm going to employ it, and I'm going to go take some notes because it's making me nervous. I've got new characters to introduce, and now I'm going to have to be real careful on how to do. I don't need them sounding like me.
That is true.
Okay, cool.
For those, a couple of the housekeeping things. Those of you who don't know, 1/11, we will be in New Orleans for AIC Live. So stay tuned on that. On a personal release note, Vengeance came out beginning of this month on Audible.
Yeah, baby.
Listen to it. Review it. Pick it up. And those of you who have been stalking around Facebook probably notices Glacia's new ads she's got for the series. They're really awesome. If you haven't, check out her page and look at the ads because they are badass.
Ooh,
aside from that,
I'm doing a giveaway too.
Oh shit, here we go.
I'm giving money away.
What?
She's giving money away. She's not giving it to me, so I'm really pissed.
No. I'm giving away a $50 Amazon gift card. People just have to enter by reviewing one of the books and screenshotting me. Any one of my books, do a review and send a screenshot, and you'll be entered to win a $50 Amazon gift card that I'm drawing for on Christmas.
Does this exclude employees of AIC?
Absolutely not.
Oh,
no,
I can do it too?
exclusions.
Fucking right.
Go ahead. Go review that shit. Get that.
I can use the $50. I can
do all
do
3
it.
of them. All three
Shit.
have 3 entries.
All right.
There you go, 3 entries. And that's
When
important.
does how long? Wait a minute. I'm way behind on my reading. I'd never get them read at time. What's the date? What's the cutoff date?
December 25th.
No, I'm never going to do it.
That would be Christmas Day. That would be Christmas Day.
Well, I'll get one. I'll get one. I want the $50. Piss on everybody else. I need them.
You know, anybody, I'm going to have, actually, Glacia can do this on AIC. Why don't you share your new logo on AIC so everybody can go check it out, because she's got a new logo, which, by the way, is incredibly badass.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Bling, bling. Cool.
Let her know what you think. Oh, yeah, it is an awesome logo. So if you get a chance, go to the AIC page site. I'll have her, she'll put it up to show everybody, because she'll show it off. She loves the thing. And let her know what you think. You know, it is awesome. It is awesome.
Go, Glaze.
So, yeah, 111-20, New Orleans.
Stay out of Jackson Square. Don't go anywhere near.
New Orleans is my jam, guys. That is my jam. I love New Orleans. She got a chance to show me around St. Augustine. I'm going to return the favor in New Orleans. We are going to go deep, deep bayou, man. I'm going to make her like ride alligators and, you know, run through the swamps.
I'm down, motherfucker.
I'm going to tie her on back of the swamp boat and drive out through the Everglades.
That's it.
Now,
all right.
You know, we're going right to Florida and do that shit. Okay, it's a lot of fun. We're going to see a lot of cool stuff, and we'll do a bunch of live spots and some recorded spots to show you guys around New Orleans, and we're going to do a writer's view in New Orleans. It's got a great vibe to it. So if you've never been there, you're going to want to check out that episode.
Cool.
So yeah, that's all I got. All right, we're good.
Thank you.
Let me figure out where our stopper is.
You've been square.